Hi Aries, welcome to your reading and welcome to my channel. Excuse me. So Aries, um, welcome to your reading once again. As you can see, I have already the cards on the table because I have a channel that is bilingual. So I do these readings in Spanish and then I follow with an English video. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is that although the cards that I'm using for your readings are the same, sometimes the information that may come up for the Spanish audience may be different for the English one. And the answer that I've been giving is because it has to do with frequencies, okay? All right, so one of the things to keep in mind is that this is an overall reading. It's not going to resonate with everybody. Also, that I like to use the principles of the law of attraction, meaning that if you feel a connection to my reading, and especially to this my style, my own personal style when I do these readings, and then this reading is for you. If not, and then let it go, or maybe sometime in the future you may come back and feel a stronger connection to the video. All right, Aries. The other thing that I would like to remind you before I begin is that I don't do fortune telling. And the reason being is because I believe that we are very powerful beings, that if we understand who we are as energy, we are able to change any situation that we consider challenging into something positive. But we need to understand the nature of who we are and the nature of the reality that we are a part of to be able to do that. So when I do the readings, I don't only talk about the physical perspective, but I also like to incorporate the vibrational one. And that's because the physical one is an extension of the energy one. So you're better off working vibrationally first to be able to address a situation or to resolve a challenge than when you do it from a physical perspective. So I use, as you can see, different oracles. So I've used 4 different oracles to give us information about the influences of energy that you're having during this time. And then I use the tarot to see how your energies are flowing. And then, bring together those 2 perspectives to give you enough information so that you can apply it in your own personal situation in a way that feels good to you, that it empowers you. All right, so if you notice in the heart of the reading, I have 2 of the cards from 2 different oracles. And it's important for me to share with you that before I choose the tarot cards, I choose the oracle cards and I don't see them. I just choose them upside down. And then after I lay the other cards, the tarot, and then I start talking and putting all the information together. And the reason why I'm saying that here is because one of the things that I've noticed is the level of magic that takes place, as well as synchronicity that happens using different oracles, and how those oracles, they come together to agree on a particular information. So to me, sometimes that's magic. It's awesome. It's beautiful. And it kind of proves to me how these tools are magical as well. There is energy behind them. And that energy has its own wisdom and own information and knowledge. And we can take advantage of that knowledge if we hold back from our judgments and our projections and pay attention to what that energy is showing us. All right, so Aries. You are a sign of fire. You represent the element of fire. Astrologically, you rule the first house, which is the house of the self. Now, in this particular cycle, the astrological card that came out, or the element, because I have an astrological deck or oracle, was Earth. So you come with fire element, but in this particular cycle, in this particular reading, the element of earth is being emphasized. So you have a very strong influence here of earth element, which tells me that this is a perfect time to be focused more on your actions. Action oriented, because we can also be focusing a lot in the process of manifestation. It's wanting to materialize certain things, and that makes you more physical focus than vibrational. But again, we're talking about two realities that come as one. And yes, there's nothing wrong with you being extremely physical focused or extremely focused on particular situations that you want to resolve. But again, there is a better way of doing things. And that's learning how to work with your energies. And when I talk about energies, I'm talking about your thoughts, your emotions, and how those two come together to create your state of being. And to be able to understand how that state of being attracts and magnetizes the opportunities that you're trying to attract. See what I mean? So it's a process of manifestation that, yes, it requires you to do a certain amount of work internally, but then the external one comes from the level of awareness of the inner knowing that you have of what you've done internally, you see? So it's not just about making a choice or just needing to resolve an issue or, like feeling stress and worry or concern or trying to, push forward and manipulate and change and do whatever it is that you need to in order to get rid of the problem. No. I'm talking about a very sophisticated way of being self-aware of energy and how energy flows, not only through you, but in the matrix that you're a part of, so that you can, try at least in all ways not to create more chaos and confusion that you need to, because there is a better way. Okay? So when I look at, the heart of your reading, so earth element is showing up, and it's showing up with the number 26. To me, the numbers are also another tool that say a lot. So when I look at 26 astrologically, it's talking about the house of Taurus and the house of Virgo. Taurus, my God, Taurus function has to do with our wealth, with our securities from a physical perspective, but vibrationally has to do with our capabilities, with our qualities, with our gifts. And 6 is the house of Virgo, which from a non-physical perspective, it talks about the process of analyzing information, energy. But from a physical one, it talks about our work, the actions, right? It's a very physical matter-oriented element. And here's the one. So you start seeing the connections between the numbers and the image or the symbology behind these cards. Now, as far as the other oracles go, on one end you have the number 7. And 7 to me, out of all the numbers, talks about movement. And it's not a movement that it has to be physical. It comes from within. It's about changes, the changes that are taking place within our inner world, our inner reality, our own self-awareness that allow us to have a better understanding about what to do. So in other words, to me, 7 represents a process that help us change the nature of our thought patterns and gives us a better idea of the kind of direction that we're going to take. So it's a number that represents movement. Interesting enough, in tarot, it represents the Chariot. And it's funny because here, well, I don't know if it's funny, but it's interesting. Behind the Ace of Wands, you have the Chariot. It's hiding in this particular case, but the Oracle here is emphasizing the energy of the Chariot. And to me, this is the card that talks about victory. But it's a victory that begins within ourselves, because it talks about understanding, being self-aware of who we are, of what we need, of what we think, of what we're missing, while we're trying to direct our energy outwardly and trying to create the opportunities that we would like to create in order to achieve whatever goals we're trying to achieve. You see what I mean? Now, on the top of the Chariot, we have the Ace of Wands, which is also representing a very raw energy, fire, like you, Aries. The planet that rules you is Mars. We're talking about raw power that is very helpful when we are trying to achieve something. It helps us and forces us or pushes us to have the determination to accomplish something. So we're dealing here with a situation that we see as a very good opportunity. There is passion here. There is a connection. And we want to win. We want to achieve satisfaction out of this connection. But there is doubt. You know, the tarot and the way that your energies are flowing, there is doubt. And here's where I want you to keep in mind, Aries, that I made this wheel, but this wheel is not fixed. It's not static. It's moving. Because the energy in our reality is also always moving in a spiral form. So when we talk about our repetitions and we say, you know, I don't know what it is, but I seem to be creating some repetitions in my life where I don't know how to stop. That repetition, or that perception, I should say, that perception comes from you focusing on the same things all the time. So it's not that the energy is repeating itself. You see it as that. You see it that way, and that's the illusion, the incredible illusion that we create in this dimension, that we get to see and select the same things, and ultimately creates this feeling of repetition in an energy that is always moving and is always changing. So when I do this wheel, I don't want you to see it as circular. I want you to see it as spiral, because that's how the energy is moving in our reality. And we're dancing within those frequencies, within those energies. And we get to choose and pick what are the information or the frequencies or the energies that we're going to work with. And in the way that we do, we either create experiences that are in alignment with the rhythm and the flow of that energy, or we get to make a mess, which is okay, because that mess teaches you something, but we can make a mess out of that energy. And ultimately, we have to be able to harmonize it, learn to harmonize it. So we get it out of whack so that we can have an experience that can teach us something. And then ultimately, we have to be able to work it out, where we'll harmonize it again, and that energy goes back into its own natural flow. And those manipulations that we create that brings that energy out of balance is what we know as karma. Actions. Every action that you take, there is a reaction. And it happens in the natural flow of that energy that has its own intelligence and it has its own rhythm. And you come just like if you were to put your hand inside of a puddle of water and you see you disturb the water. And that's what we do. So when you look at this, please make sure that you know and remind yourself that these energies are moving. So the cards that are upside down eventually and naturally will come up if you're able to get out of your way with your own way of thinking, or at least with the way that you've been thinking about, because you're the person who made those energies vibrate upside down. You see what I mean? And I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about the other person or the other people that are involved in whatever situation the oracle is speaking up, or the tarot. So if you have the level of equanimity and patience to understand how energy works, and you work at being more neutral and moving away from those perceptions and those judgments that you have that has created these blockages in the flow of energy, you're going to see that that energy eventually is going to organize itself where things are going to come back into harmony again. But you have to have the patience, you have to have the self-awareness and the desire to do so. You got to trust, you got to surrender. And you got to tame your ego, especially your ego, which is the aspect of you that is always forcing you and pushing you to do things ahead of the time, because, you know, that's just the nature of the ego. Your instincts, on the other hand, they work very differently. But your ego is always, you know, trying to create some sort of story to tell you that whatever you're doing is not good enough. Because the ego has been trained to behave that way. Can the ego be retrained? Yes. But that requires you to have the efforts, the desired efforts, and work with self-awareness to teach your ego how to stop behaving in the way that it is. In other words, you need to remove all of those different programs that your ego has running to make you react and respond in the way that you do. So coming back to this, well, you know, there's a situation here where we're very attracted to it. And that's what the cards say. Now, in the way that we've been dealing with the situation, there is doubts. We see, you know, the cards are showing doubts. Because out of 8 cards that we have in the tarot, we have, well, the sun came out upside down at first, came out like this. So I should put it like that. It came out upside down. Now, when you put it together in the wheel, it doesn't look that way. See what I mean? Because it came out, I want to emphasize, it came out this way. So it came out upside down. But when I face it like this, now it changes the nature of how that energy is flowing. And I feel like there's a very strong influence of the sun in this particular situation, even though we may not want to admit it. Okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 cards upside down out of 8. Major arcanas, we have 2. High Priestess crowning the reading, which is a very silent force in this particular situation. And then the sun on the side. Okay? So when we look at the energies of these 2 major arcanas, well, the High Priestess in astrology is Taurus. And what did I say here? The Taurus function? I already told you what that is, right? And we have the sun, which comes with the number 19. 19 in astrology, 1 is your house, the self, and 9 is the hermit. It's searching and seeking for clarity. And when you add those up, 1 plus 9 is 10, the Wheel of Fortune. Now we have a 10 of Swords here upside down. So this card is talking about the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune to me is a card that talks about change. Now it's also a card that talks about repetition. And one of the things that I've been telling you here is sometimes when we see things circularly, we're repeating situations, but that's because of our perceptions. The things that we're noticing, in the way that we're perceiving them, we're creating that repetition. But energy is not that way, right? And interesting enough, in the way the oracle is letting you know is by the information that is bringing you, the influence behind all of this. You have 3 sevens, and then you have a 4th one here hidden in the back, the Chariot. The first one is talking about seek the truth. Look at this card with the number 7. Seek the truth. Astrologically, the number 7 is the house of Libra, which is the house that represents the other. How we're sharing the self, ourselves, to others. And here we see 2 faces and then 1 path. You see, the card is saying a lot. 2 people, 2 minds, but we need to unite in 1 path. And in this particular situation, we have to begin by searching for our own truth. Sometimes our truth is not the same as the other person, but we need to start somewhere if we want to fix a situation. Our tendency is to go outwardly and to judge or manipulate the situation so that the other people change enough so that I can feel better. In this particular way, or in this paradigm, the cards are saying, no, you begin with you. You got to find the light within you. And there is a duality in you that you need to harmonize. And that duality gets created between your head and your heart. 2 aspects of you that are extremely different, but they need to work as one. So you need to find your truth and see what kind of polarities you're creating between what you think is right and what you feel that is true. The other card is repeating the 7, 7, 7. This is a master number, and it's talking about spirituality. Wow. This is a word that is not talking about religion, Aries. I'm not talking here about religious doctrine. Okay? Talking about spirituality, about energy. There's another word in English that we use instead of spirituality, and it's called the quantum field. Right now, science is really exploring the quantum, oh my God, sorry guys, I just kind of blanked out. Quantum physics or quantum mechanics. And it's basically a science that is recognizing that we're energy as well, that we're just not physical matter. So spirituality is not necessarily about any particular doctrine, even though if that's how you want to go about it, that's fine, as long as it makes you feel at peace. And to me, because a lot of times I get people asking me, well, how do I know what works for me? Well, you have a guidance system within you that can tell you right away if something is working or not. And those are your feelings. If you feel good, and if you feel happy, and if you feel one, that information is good for you. But if you don't feel that way, and then honor it and let it go and keep moving, that's how you know. Because your feelings is your guiding system. And it's a guiding system that it doesn't analyze information in the way your mind does. It just knows. It tells all the different areas of you right away that energy is not good. Or yes, or that energy feels good. Do you need to understand why it didn't feel good? Well, that's up to you. But you don't have to. You just need to know that, hey, that feeling was not good. And because it's not good to me, that's good enough not to want to continue to pursue that. That's all it is. That's all it takes. It's that simple, but we're not used to simple things. We need to analyze it and overly analyze it because we're being trained and programmed to behave that way. Do we have to? No, but we do it. And sometimes that will complicate things even more, but we do it anyways. sometimes we like complications. Now, in this particular case, the oracles are saying the path here is through spirituality, and no wonder you have the high priestess crowning the reading. See what I mean? This is what I talk about synchronicity. How all of these different oracles, they come together to reinforce one another. And these are cards that I picked before these. You see what I mean? So that you don't have any doubts. And then it creates this repetition of the 7 3 times. And to me, you know, this is a very sophisticated frequency. Normally, people call this angelical frequencies. I call them sophisticated frequencies that we can transmute, given that we're capable of being self-aware of who we are as energy beings, and we start mastering those qualities, working with those qualities to a point that we master them. And the Hierophant is one of the cards in the tarot that represents that, just like the High Priestess. It's just that one is feminine and the other one is masculine, which is representing the archetypes. You know, I can go on and on and on. And this, and you probably say, well, but, you know, this is not necessarily a style of reading tarot. Yes, it is. Because it allows you to understand who you are as energy being. You know, I can sit down here and say, hey, you have a problem to resolve. You may feel indecisive with a particular situation that you're attracted to, or there is some sort of attraction, but we're kind of debating whether to stay or whether to go. And that's great, because you right away say, oh my goodness, that's exactly what's happening to me. And maybe I can go and say, well, the other person has feelings for you, and they miss you, and they like you, and they love you, and they want to work with you. And you're like, wow, that feels so nice to know that the person that I'm interested in is also thinking about me in those terms. And then what? And then what do? And then I can tell you, oh yeah, there's going to be possibly a conversation. Just hang in there, buddy, because, you know, this person is working it out just like you are. And eventually you guys are going to talk about it, and you're going to feel really good. But what if that doesn't happen? What if the way you're focusing and vibrating your energies, you create a change suddenly in that energy flow that doesn't happen, even though it's showing in the cards? And you can do that. Because to shift in your way of thinking, it doesn't take a lot of time. It happens in a split of a moment or a second, not even a second. It can be that quickly. And that can be strong enough to create an impact in the energy flow that now you don't get to have that conversation. But you see, in your head, you created this expectation, and now you're feeling really good because you're like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and wait. I'm going to wait until this person knocks on my door, and finally we get to have that conversation, and I can tell them how I feel. But you don't understand that energy in the background. It's sometimes working very differently than you're doing in the physical aspect. And this is where a lot of times people don't give a shit, but I do. Because I don't want you to sit around with your head full of stuff and fantasies and then not realizing and understanding what happened. Why is it that you didn't get what you were told that you were going to get? So I see here that, look, you have what it takes to work with more sophisticated frequencies. Let's say it that way. But you have to somehow work it out where you go and seek for your own light and your own truth. So while you may be asking, okay, should I stay or should I go? So that's one of the questions that is showing up here. Should I stay or should I go? The oracle is saying, do neither one. Work on yourself and seek your truth. You understand that, Aries? That's what the oracle is suggesting. It's also saying, play hard. I'm not crazy about that phrase, but the meaning is find time to laugh, goof off, enjoy each other, enjoy yourself. You got to first to enjoy yourself. You know, I do this practice of meditation that helps me to become more familiar with who I am. And one of the things that I realized that, hey, if I can spend time with myself and not be bored, and then I can spend time with other people. And, you know, if I can like myself, other people can like me as well. If I don't like myself, nobody else is going to like me either. So here it's like, you know, enjoy, relax a little. Also, it's asking you to be vulnerable. When we are very stressed and there are blockages in our energy flow, our heart center is closed and we're out of business. We're in a protective mode. When we're out of business, or we're out to lunch, or out to dinner, or out on vacation, there is nothing coming in. Nothing is getting in. Because we're in a protective mode. So we have to learn that yes, there are moments and situations in our lives that makes our heart close. And we get in a protective mode and there is no information. We're not letting information come in. But we have to then be able to work at changing that so that we can start receiving newer information. Because when we are closed up and we're disconnected from the source of all knowing, you create circular patterns of repetition. You see that? You understand that, Aries? And the only way that you can break through those repetitions is by opening your heart center, being vulnerable. The reason why we're not vulnerable is because we're afraid. We're afraid to get hurt. And when we're afraid to get hurt, now we are in a protective mode and we're not really understanding our own energy and our own power. So one of the things that I recommend and the Oracle recommends is go and search for knowledge, truth, spirituality. And not just something superficial. Here is telling you to go deep within it. High Priestess. Isn't that interesting? And in that particular, and you know, the other thing that it's saying is that in this particular situation that you may be having, let's say that you don't want to follow the advice of the Oracle and you just like, you know, I don't have time for that. Basically saying that, you know, you're going to have experiences that are going to force you to go down that path because that's how you're being guided to go, Aries. And here's the other card, dedicated efforts. You see that? Somebody working here. This is basically where the energy in the background is leading you to. So you either could do it in a good way, you know, open and receptive to do the work, or you're gonna be forced to do it. And believe me, there's a big difference between you volunteering to do something than when the universe forces you to do something. Trust me, I know this from my own personal experiences. And it comes with the number 8. Astrologically, that's the house of transformation, Scorpio. See what I mean? So a lot of what you're needing to do in this particular cycle, it requires you to change and have this level of change that will transform you. It also transform your life. And ultimately will allow you to resolve this dilemma. Now, I picked some cards from a different oracle because I wanted to see which ones are repeating. And there were 2 cards, I believe, that were repeated here. And I think it was the 10 of Swords, if I remember correctly. So let me see. It was the 10 of Swords and the 8. Okay, so in this particular round and circular motion, there are 2 cards, as I said, that are being repeated. The 8 of Cups, in this particular case, is upside down, and the 10 of Swords, it's also upside down. Here, well, as you could see, 10 of Swords here is sideways. So 10 of Swords, again, it talks about change, having difficulties changing, letting go of the insecurities or the, you know, you know, the communication, because this has a lot to do with communication that could be painful and hurtful. The Eight of Cups, it's whether I go or stay. You know, there is an indecision here because we're having feelings, and because, you know, we don't want to lose whatever it is that we feel that we can lose in this particular situation. So we're kind of trying to work it out and trying to decide whether we can communicate and work this stuff out, if there is, you know, a chance to do that. So it's, you know, like we're giving it value to this particular, you know, we're trying to determine if there is a self-worth or some sort of value in this particular situation for ourselves. But I have to then remind you, Aries, that the Oracle, what is asking you to do instead is to step back and go and search for your own truth. And it's so clear. It's so obvious. Maybe that's not what you want to hear, but I have to honor what the Oracle is saying. So I wish you the best of luck, Aries. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.